Hello and welcome back to Call Center Helper. My name is Xander Freeman, and our latest research has just dropped. Today, we're talking all about employee engagement. To help with that discussion, I'm so excited to be joined by Danny Wareham, business psychologist and founder of Firgun. Danny, thank you so much for joining me again.
It's always a pleasure speaking to you, Xander. I learn something every time we have a discussion.
So do I, which is why I always like doing these ones. So let's bring it back to the survey that we've just released. We're seeing a 5% increase in positive results there around employee engagement, moving up from 62% in 2024 to 67% this year. Before we get into what that means and why we think that is the case, one of the bits of your analysis that I really want to pull out here is when people have the freedom to make choices about how they work, their engagement, well-being, and performance tend to improve. I don't think that encapsulates things so perfectly.
Yeah, thank you. As you know, I'm a bit of an academic. I do like to cite a few things in any of my contributions, and there's some fantastic research by Deci and Ryan around self-determination theory, which is about how do people feel valued, how do they perceive themselves, and very simply, it breaks down to: am I safe? And we call that relatedness.
Mm.
Do I know what I'm doing? So do I have competence? And am I in control of what I'm doing? So autonomy. And contact centers seem to be booking the trend compared to what's in the global state of the workforce report. And I believe part of that, having spent nearly 30 years in contact centers, is the flexibility that we have, certainly since COVID, with things like flexible working, the variety of roles that are in there, the amount of secondment opportunities that mean we tend to move around organizations. All of this adds to increasing your competency and increasing your level of autonomy as well. And that seems to be playing through in the data.
I think so. And I think it's, again, contact centers, or let's take customer contact in general, really. It's such a niche industry in in the sense of it is niche and it is quite small and insular in that way, but it touches so many other wider industries as well. And like you say, the opportunity for progression, further autonomy, further development is so almost ingrained into this. It's no wonder that has an impact. And again, like you mentioned and mentioned in your analysis, the effect of hybrid and remote working, specifically within contact centers as well, can have such a profound effect on employee autonomy and hence engagement.
Yeah, you know my philosophy is happy bees make tasty honey. If we
Mm.
create the right environment with the right processes, right structures, and performance, including happiness, is a side effect of that. And it, to me, interpreting these results, it kind of feels that if you've got if you've got more control over your day, if you know what is expected of you, and contact centers are heavily regulated and or measured as well. I remember when I first started, we were measured on things like average handling time, which don't seem to be quite as popular these days. But we can measure an awful lot of stuff. So we've got kind of guardrails and expectations, but we've got plenty of space to be autonomous and have some fun in between as well. And that seems to attract or repel people from the industry, for better or for worse. If you're in the industry, you tend to be there for a very long time.
That does seem to be the case. I think when I
Yeah.
first joined this industry, people come and say, "Oh, I'm new to. I've only been here 10 years." And it
Yeah.
makes you realize just quite how big of a spectrum we're talking about here. But no, I think you're 100% right there when we're talking about employee engagement in contact centers. Obviously, there's a broad spectrum within that as well when it comes to sort of CX leaders versus advisors within
Mhm.
that within the realm of engagement. I think that's where you see some discrepancies in the year-to-year figures. But ultimately, I think it's important to learn from the contact centers that are doing things right and how we can sort of apply that across the board, which is what we try and do as CCH anyway, is getting out the positive stories, ones that we think you can replicate.
Absolutely. And to come back to your point on hybrid working, hybrid done well works really well. There is a bit of a push towards more sort of return to the office mandates, not just in contact center industries. And we are starting to see some pushback against that because it removes some of that autonomy. It removes some of that safety. Everybody likes to drink their own coffee or work with their cat in the lap or control their work environment. So one of the things that contact center leaders need to be careful about is as more controls are being added, whether that's AI tools to support knowledge management, whether that's return to office or a kind of mixture of a couple of days in the office, a couple of days remote, that we're considering how does that impact on our people's competency their relatedness and their safety, and then also their flexibility and autonomy as well. Because if we impinge on those, then we'll start to see those numbers potentially head south.
Yeah, and I think, like you said before, it's all about engagement there as well, right? And it's when we're talking about a sort of hybrid or remote working setup, that is obviously a very different dynamic to being in the office all day, where people can actually physically see the impact it's having on your emotional state as well, not only from your advisor's ability to actually emote and let's say, engage empathetically with people who
Mhm.
are contacting them, but also from a leader's perspective there as well. And there's so many different variables to take into account depending on what system you have. We're not saying one is better than the other inherently, but it's important to learn those right decisions from the ones that do it well.
I think you have hit the nail on the head, and I think if we don't know what to do,
Mm.
which is fine, we don't always know everything. As long as we're doing things intentionally and not just trying to replicate what we did in the office remotely,
Mm.
then we're in a step to the right direction. So, for example, when you're in the contact center with your team, certainly when I was a team leader a few years ago, those little nudges and coffee chats and overhearing conversations, those kind of things, they become kind of informal coaching and informal guidance. When you're separate from your agents, you kind of lose that.
Mm.
So are you intentionally checking in more frequently? Are you intentionally guiding conversations and not just asking generally how you are? And I think if we have some intentionality and some purposefulness behind our decisions,
Mm.
then we can make sure that that relatedness of am I safe? Do I matter? That's not impinged on. It's not going to be. It's not going to feel like out of sight, out of mind.
Well, Danny, I was going to ask you like just to wrap up, if you were reading this report from sort of the perspective of a customer contact leader, what would your key takeaways be for your team? But I mean, you've sort of just, I mean, one of them you said right there, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much information in the report, and there's a lot of analysis, a lot of thoughtful analysis that's been done as well. Mine, my suggestions, other than what we've discussed, are twofold. One is be proud of the figures that are coming out of it. We're doing things right because we're above the norm for how engaged our people are.
Mm.
However, that comes with the other side of don't rest on your laurels. There are still challenges ahead. Technology and AI, we're already starting to see AI adoption rates and change rates plummet.
Mm.
We're starting to see a kind of that fear of missing out purchasing that we did with AI tools and technology now actually coming to bite some people because we're not quite sure what we invested in. And in all of this mess, we can forget about the people. So fantastic that we've got some great performances on one side, but let's not rest on our laurels and do things intentionally so that we don't get mired in all these tech changes, people changes, regulatory changes, and industry challenges that we tend to be used to in the contact center because we love a bit of change.